So my name is Kai Stroud. I use male pronouns, and I will be giving the update for the developer onboarding working group this year. The overarching goals for this group are to create documentation and other resources designed to help Samvera development teams onboard a developer who has no Samvera experience, as well as creating plans to ensure the documentation can stay up to date. These are the big goals we started with. What this ended up meaning in more concrete details was that we discovered that there's lots of documentation spread across many different locations. And so one of our goals was to consolidate those down. We also discovered that being able to update the documentation as well as ease of discoverability were both very important goals for us. Our members are Heather Greer Klein, which I think everybody is familiar with. Also, Julie Hardesty from Indiana University, and myself, who is a software engineer from SoftServe. This group so far, I'm going to keep this slide brief because we went over the same updates last year. But for anybody who wasn't here last year or doesn't remember, the group started with a planning phase where we compiled a list of existing documentation and then analyzed it to decide how best to move forward. And then decided that a great place to start for our second phase was the Hyrax README, which we updated and streamlined. There was a lot of content that had been kind of put there that didn't fit the best in a README, and so we moved that mostly to more wiki locations, especially the wiki pages for the Hyrax repo. And then we also updated some content that was out of date and fixed some links that were broken for the Hyrax README. So those were all things that we had accomplished in between 2022 and 2023. So this year, our biggest focus has been the Samvera knowledge base. So this is the samvera.github.io site that many of you, I'm sure, are familiar with. We had polled the community last spring about usage and maintenance and got lots of input. We then decided that the best way to move forward was to migrate the content from that site to Confluence. This was mostly because the old site was hard to maintain. It was a bit clunky, especially for non-developers, because you had to make content changes in GitHub, which required you to be familiar with GitHub, which not everyone who is contributing documentation is. And then also the changes made needed to be deployed by somebody who understands how to deploy code. Whereas Confluence, assuming you're a community member, you should have access to edit most pages and they're updated instantly. The status of this work is that we're mostly done. Some of the things when we migrated, there were some pages that had broken formatting that we've gone through and have fixed. I think really the last step is to just double check that nothing important got missed and that we indeed have brought over everything that is still relevant. We didn't bring over absolutely everything from the old knowledge base, just the things that were still relevant and not out of date. But I will note that the old content, it will still be available on GitHub. So you'll still be able to find it if you need it for some reason, but it is worth noting that the old knowledge base is going to be sunset soon. So that Samvera GitHub IO site will no longer be available, and instead, folks should look to the Confluence wiki instead. The future of this group is really interesting. It's something I'm very excited about. We're actually going to be transforming into an interest group this summer around the same time that the old knowledge base is sunset. We're going to host monthly calls that are open to all, and community members can attend to ask questions or make requests in the context of documentation. And the interest group will create documentation-related tickets, and these are tickets that can be worked on by developers or non-developers during things like dev congresses to address pieces of documentation that folks either want or is outdated or are having trouble locating. So I'm really excited about that. If you want to contribute, keep an eye out for the interest group this summer. That's the biggest thing. And we're going to need more members and especially folks who have dev teams, but honestly, anybody who uses the Samvera documentation, which I think applies to many folks here. You can also check out the new the new knowledge base in Confluence. If you see anything there that's out of date or needs a correction or there's something missing that you want to add, please do so. You should be able to know. You can also reach out to Heather or myself in Slack if you're interested to know more. That's all I have for the update. Does anybody have any questions?